Hello everyone, my name is Mohammad Umar and I am studying from FAST National University of Emerging Science and Technology. Today the topic I will talk about is compiler construction. We will not go in details, we will just do the introduction. I will just go through the introduction. So what is compiler construction? Compiler construction is basically a construction of a compiler. You can also call it as a compiler design. Now I will talk about what is compiler. Compiler is basically a computer program that will translate computer code written in one programming language to another programming language. You can also say it as it will translate source code to target code. Basically, the name compiler is a program for a computer to translate a higher programming language to a lower programming language. For example, assembly language, machine code, object code, etc. Um, to make an executable program. Before we go any further, let me tell you about the history of compiler. The first compiler was developed in 1952 by Grace Hopper for a programming language, and the first complete compiler was developed by uh, John Backus for Fortran, and the first multiple architecture compiler was developed in 1960 named as COBOL, and in 1962 a first self-hosting compiler was developed named as Lisp. Now we come to the types of compiler, in which we will discuss about the different types of compiler. There are many types of compiler, but we will only discuss about the major types of compiler. There comes a single pass compiler, which will compile the whole process into a single pass, and then there comes a multiple pass compiler, which will compile the whole process or the uh, source code of a program multiple times. And then there comes a cross compiler. It is basically a program that will run in those computers or PCs whose CPU or operating system is different from the one in which compiler runs. And then there comes a bootstrap compiler. It is a language which intend to compile, and there comes a decompiler, which is the inverse of a compiler. It will translate the lower level language into a higher level language. And there's a source to source compiler. It is also called as a transcript compiler. It will translate between the languages. There's a language rewrite, which is a program which will translate the form of expression without changing the language. And then there comes the term compiler, which is referred to a tool which create parser, which will perform syntax analysis. There are certain processes that compiler can perform that include pre-processing, lexical analysis, semantic analysis, parsing, and conversion of input into intermediate representative, code optimization, code generation. If there is a fault in program due to compiler behavior, that it can be difficult to track down and work around. So our compiler implementer has put a significant amount of effort to ensure the correctness of compiler. There is another program called interpreter, which can also translate the source code into a target code. But there's a huge difference between interpreter and compiler. Compiler can translate the whole code into a target code, while the interpreter can translate the source code into target code line by line. Compiler consume large memory and while the interpreter consume small memory. And when it comes to the bugs, it is difficult to find bugs in compiler, but it is easy to find bugs in interpreter, because compiler can convert the translate the whole code into target code, while the interpreter can translate the code into target code line by line. So it is easy to find bugs in interpreter than compiler. Thank you. If you have any questions, please comment down below and I will try to answer all of your questions.